All right, Mayor.
Great. Thank you, Dottie, and welcome everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, How Arts, Cultural, and Tourism Drive Economic Development. Just let that sink in, right? It is like just such an amazing words that come together that a lot of folks may not necessarily, but with our panelists today, we'll see how all that is driven. My name is Mary Waldron. I'm the Executive Director of Old Colony Planning Council. OCPC, as we're known, is one of 13 regional planning agencies in the Commonwealth. We assist our 17 communities in planning for present and future needs by utilizing our local knowledge, technical expertise, and regional collaboration. One of our staff, Dottie Fuginetti, is our Senior Planner in Economic Development and Housing Equity Department. She also happens to be the chair of the Select Board in Easton. And Dottie, as you know, is the one who's been coordinating today's webinar. But to learn more about Old Colony Planning Council, visit our website, oldcolonyplanning.org. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Old Colony Planning Council's comprehensive economic development strategy for co-hosting this webinar today. Chair Mary Ellen Brett of Massasoit Community College, along with many of the members of the SEDS, are on today's session. They've been leading the committee through collaborative process to strengthen our regional economy. This webinar is part of that work. And before I introduce the panelists, I have a couple housekeeping notes. If you have any questions at any time, please submit them through the Q&A button that you see on your screen. I know some of you like to do it in chat, sometimes monitoring that, but if you can utilize the Q&A, because that might be a question that somebody else may have. This meeting is being recorded and will be available in the next couple days. We will email the link to the recording and the slides for everyone that have registered. It will also be on OCPC's website and our YouTube channel. So please don't forget to subscribe to both our website and our YouTube. We also have a new Instagram account that we're looking forward to launching. Today, we are welcoming Keiko Orrall, Executive Director of the Mass Office of Travel and Tourism, also known as MOTT. MOTT promotes Massachusetts as a year-round leisure and business travel destination. Massachusetts has a lot to offer both domestic and international visitors, including history, culture, cuisine, and outdoor activities. They were instrumental in rolling out grants and funding during the pandemic, and you probably have seen their Love My Local and Visit Mass campaigns. Keiko will be joined by Michael Bobbitt, Executive Director of the Mass Cultural Council. Mass Cultural Council partners with communities across the Commonwealth to expand access, improve education, promote diversity, and encourage excellence in the arts, humanities, and the sciences. These efforts make our state a better place to live, work, and visit for everyone. If you're not following Michael on social media, you are certainly missing out. And from the local tourism perspective, we have Lee Filson. She's the president and CEO of Plymouth to give us a look into how virtual tourism, not only to Plymouth, but also, to give us a look into how tourism is, and not only in Plymouth, but also our region. Plymouth is the official tourism site for the town and the county of Plymouth, Americans' hometown, and I'm lucky to serve on the board of directors. So with that, I'd like to start with welcoming Keiko and for you to provide your presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mary, for that introduction. Thank you, Dottie, for organizing everything. I'm so happy to be here on this panel with Michael and Lee, and we are excited about the hour ahead. I have a short presentation and I'm going to tee that up. So my role as the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Office of Travel and Tourism. We are housed within the Secretariat, Housing and Economic Development. Our secretary is Yvonne Howe. She was just named by the Healy Driscoll administration in January. We're part of the Mass Marketing Partnership, which means that we work with the Office of International Trade and Investment, Massport, and the Massachusetts Convention Center Authority, and we promote marketing in the Commonwealth, both domestically and internationally. We are, our strategy is to market on all media channels and support the travel industry in their efforts to do the same. We are integrated with sports and film, and so all of those are under the brand of MOTT. So this is about economic impact of the tourism industry. And as you can see from the chart, in 2019, we had about $21 billion in spending from the domestic traveler. We are preliminary estimates are that we're 80% of the way there for 2022. We don't have those current figures yet, but we are on track for recovery. The international market is taking a little longer, but these are big numbers, and the impact is large. As a state agency, we work with our state tourism groups. We work closely with the Plymouth and the regional tourism councils. We work with Mass Lodging, Mass Restaurant Association, and the list is there for our state tourism groups. Some are private, some are public. Our state government partners, we work with the Joint Committee on Tourism, Arts, and Culture. There were 2 new legislative champions that were just named to those committees, Mindy Daum from Amherst, and Paul, she's the state representative, and Paul Mark from Peru, and he is the Senate representative for the Joint Committee on Tourism, Arts, and Culture. We work with Massport, as I mentioned, the Convention Center, the DOT. So thrilled to be on the panel with Mass Cultural, and look forward to opportunities to work in the future. All of these agencies have a piece and a part in tourism. Regionally, we work with Discover New England, the New England associations that are listed here. Nationally, we work with U.S. Travel, National Council of State Directors, and internationally, we work with the nation's destination marketing organization, Brand USA. We also work with the Consular Corps. There are 60 consul generals in Boston. Our grant programs, prior to the pandemic, we primarily worked with regional tourism councils, and those were our partners. We worked with them on marketing. We did a $6 million competitive grant that's funded out of room occupancy taxes and game revenue. The pandemic provided opportunities to broaden that grant outreach, and we did some travel and tourism recovery grants that were aimed at supporting chambers of commerce and economic development, main streets. It was a broader reach than our regional tourism councils, and we provided 80 awards for those marketing projects. We also launched destination development capital grants, and those are supporting tourism assets across the state, and you'll hear more about those in the presentation. We have travel and tourism season extension grants that are funded by the federal government, and those are 6 grants across the state, and they are going to be used for funding tourism marketing projects from November through April. So we're excited about that. Those awards were just awarded, and we're getting things rolling. So our primary marketing tools are our website, visitma.com. For people on the line, I know you're from different parts of Plymouth County. Businesses that are associated with travel and tourism can be featured on our website with a free account. So if you're in the travel and tourism industry, or you know people in the travel and tourism industry, they can be linked to this site. We're a state government website. It's we have a safety, we have a screening process, but once they sign up, their site will be linked to our site, and they can get some global marketing exposure. We have some travel guides, seasonal guides, and our primary social channels. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We're excited about the growth that we've seen there. I mentioned the Mass Film Office. We have filming locations around the state, and I'm going through this overview so that you, as a planning organization, understand we're the state agency. We're working with you, for you, and we want to help you understand how it all works. So we work with the film office. We work with municipalities around the state when Disney calls up and they need to do some locations, they want to do a certain location, they will contact us and we help out with that. This is a slide of a lot of links. And once you're sent the PDF, you'll be able to click on those. We have a lot of sporting events in Massachusetts. I'm going to call your attention to the very last one, the 124th Army-Navy game. We're very excited about that coming out in December, as it's the first time in years that it's been outside of the Maryland, Annapolis area. So we're excited about that opportunity. As Mary mentioned, we had a My Local MA campaign, and I will give some high-level stats for that. We're continuing to promote the idea that we want to support brick and mortar stores with a statewide buy, stay, eat local campaign. And so My Local MA continues to this day. More than 500 local businesses have been highlighted. And if you go to our website at visitma.com, you can also participate in the My Local MA campaign. I mentioned the Destination Development Capital Grants, and those are aimed at enhancing tourism resources. And that grant is actually open until March 31st. We have a Q&A that's coming up on March 1st. And that is for projects. I give the example of the bathrooms at the Old North Church. It's on the Freedom Trail. It's a tourism destination. The Destination Development Capital Grants would go towards helping with the bathroom improvements. I think that's great. Or Franklin County, where the improvement of the asphalt and the pavement has improved and achieved handicap accessibility. So those are the types of things where for tourism destinations and attractions, we're providing capital resources to support those efforts. And then we also have the marketing efforts. So here's some sample of our My Local MA creative, and we had a restaurant focused campaign as well with Let's Go Out. Our out of state tourism campaign overview. We started to advertise outside of Massachusetts for the first time in many years, just last May. And that continues to this day. So we're running commercials we're running advertising in New York, Connecticut, our target markets. You can see those there. You're not seeing them here because we're targeting those other areas, but the campaign is doing very well. And here's some sample creative. We had no matter if you're butter or mayo, we have it here, and you're welcome here to visit Massachusetts, scenic or city. We have wonderful places around the state. So you can see that that's some of our campaign that's continuing to this date. My last slide is about, and you can't really see it, but the visual is to provide an overview of what we're trying to do as a state agency. Too many times we have people siloed and working and doing their best. What we found with the pandemic is that we work much better when we're sharing information, collaborating, and working with other state agencies. And so this slide is about showing that we work with Massport, the Mass Convention Center, Office of International Trade and Investment, Mass Econ, on all of our marketing efforts. I believe that that's where we're going to continue to see our Commonwealth shine, and we're going to continue to work on that. What happens when we put together a slide like this is we'll have meetings where we're talking about the German market, and then Massport comes through with a delegation has something that's happening in Germany. And so then there are really good opportunities. I see that there are ways that we can help not only the regional tourism councils, but also MCCA as we're pooling our state resources together. So I can be contacted. Here's my email. It's going to be in our PDF. And I'm going to stop sharing now. But I look forward to hearing more from Michael and Lee and answering your questions.
Keiko,
Thanks, Mary.
there's a question in the question and answer. Are all Mott grants a one-to-one match?
They are not all one-to-one matches. The Destination Development Capital Grant is a one-to-one match. The Travel and Tourism Season Marketing Grants were not.
Great, thank you. I do not see any other. Thank you. Dottie's going to answer it, but I do not see any other questions for you. But all I've heard today, from you is grants and marketing and collaboration and discussions and community and international and a whole lot of things. And your website, which I've been on a number of times, is certainly a well-informed and very helpful. So thank you. We'll be able to circle back because I'm sure people are thinking of other questions, but I'd like to then introduce then to have Michael come in and present.
Thank you so much, Mary and Dottie, for having me. And it's great to see Lee and Keiko as usual, like the trifecta here in the room. You'll probably hear a lot of similarities in some of the work that Keiko does and some of the work that we do at Mass Cultural. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. And we'll get to it. All right. So a lot of the photos are, they're all Massachusetts artists, but you'll see a lot of photos coming from our cultural districts, which is a program that we run now that I'll tell you a little bit more about. We are an independent state agency that is charged with celebrating and bolstering the cultural sector. We advance economic vitality, support transformational change, and celebrate, preserve, and inspire creativity across all of Massachusetts. Massachusetts, I think of as an arts destination. I want to sort of deepen that brand. We pursue our mission through a broad range of programs, services, advocacies, and then our equitable investments of public resources. Our funding, where does it come from? Well, typically we get around $22 million from the annual state operating budget. And I know that we have a great art supporter online right now, Rep. Muratori, who is a huge art supporter, and we thank him for the work he does to make sure we get allocated every year. 75% of our grant, our allocation goes out to grants, and the rest is used for general operating or other programs as we see fit. We do get 2% of state casino gaming revenues. That works out to be about $4 to $5 million a year. And that goes out to mitigate the potential loss of revenue that the performing arts centers around the state might incur because of the casinos moving into the state. We also get a $10 million grant of capital bond money in partnership with Mass Development to celebrate and to support our cultural facilities fund. Similar to the program that Keiko was sharing. This program helps to preserve and restore Massachusetts facilities, but also to upgrade HVAC and accessibility needs throughout the state. And then we get about $1 million from the National Endowment for the Arts. And this year, again, thank you, Rep. Muratori. This year, we received $61 million from, and it said 51, I'll explain. $61 million in pandemic recovery funds to Mass Cultural Council. This came through the ARPA, American Rescue Plan spending. Our money did come from the state surplus, which is very good. And so we're investing about $100 million this year. It says 51 on this animated slide here. We put some money into the Cultural Facilities Fund. We also gave some money to Mass Humanities, and the rest went out in grant programs. And I'll tell you a little bit about what those look like. We gave out $20 million to individual artists. 4,000 artists got $5,000 grants, and 98% of those artists are brand new recipients of funding from Mass Cultural Council. And then we did $31 million to organizations. That went to 1,218 organizations, receiving grants from $5,000 to $75,000. And 42% of those grantees are brand new to Mass Cultural Council. So it's been a really great year. It's a one-time pandemic recovery funds. We'll see what happens in the future. But this has been a fun year to celebrate the cultural sector and help to recover from the pandemic. The pandemic, I should also say that the pandemic was devastating. We were the first sector to close and the last sector to open. And this restoration and recovery from this is going to be a 5 to 10 year process. Here's a list of our grant programs. We have 11 distinct grant programs, some other services that we do, but these are our major grant programs. Communities can apply for local cultural council grants, festivals and project grants. We also have our cultural district program, which I'll tell you a little bit more about later. This is a great slide I like to brag on, but according to the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, in 2020, the arts and culture sector contributed $23.7 billion to the state's GDP. That's 4.1% of the state's GDP and 125 and some change jobs, and a total compensation of $13.6 billion. Most people don't know that, but that typically puts the cultural sector as the third, sometimes fourth largest sector contributing to the GDP. And I think the numbers coming out this year has bumped us up quite a bit. We also know that for every one ticket that's sold to a sporting event, 5 tickets go to arts and culture events. And those of you that participate and consume art and culture know that when you go out to see a show, you might get your hair done or your nails done or buy a new outfit. You may be inviting several friends with you. You are driving, parking, putting gas in the car, using rideshare or public transportation. You may be having a meal prior to or a drink after. And so all the secondary spending that comes around arts consumption really help to bring a lot of money into your communities. People from all over, as Keiko said, people from all over the world and the nation travel to Massachusetts because of our rich history, diversity, and rich cultural landscape. Here's some quotes I pulled from a few publications, and there's probably like a list of 30 that I have, but these were fun ones to point out. And as I mentioned earlier, my goal is to make the whole state really an arts destination. Massachusetts can boast that we have some of the longest running, historic, largest, first premier arts organizations in the whole country. And it's something that I want to brag about even more. We do have a cultural districts initiative, and those you saw on the earlier slide that we do some funding for those districts, but it was established in 2011 coming out of the economic crisis to really sort of incentivize communities to have a cultural center in their community. So we have at the moment 53 cultural districts across the state. It supports the driving of economic growth and the strengthening the distinctive local character of communities and improves the quality of life all across Massachusetts. Carolyn Cole, I'll show you a slide later. She's a program officer at Mass Cultural Council, is working very hard to deepen the work of the cultural districts. We went back and looked at the Enabling Act to see what flexibility we have to expand the work of the districts. And there's a little bit of language that says other state agencies should support the cultural districts if they have programs that can support them. So part of what we're going to do in the next few years is to develop and build those relationships so we can get more support in our cultural districts and build them. The 3 in your area, the Plymouth Bay Cultural District, the Situate Harbor Cultural District, and Shoveltown Cultural District in Easton are the ones I encourage you to visit. They have programming that happens throughout the year. And then we have 2 that are looking to build cultural districts, Middleborough and Duxbury. The benefits of being a designated cultural district is that it does attract tourists and entrepreneurs, helping to develop the city and town cultural sectors and tax base. You're eligible to apply for Mass Cultural and other state agency grant programs. And then they have monthly convenings and information sharing and best practice sharing. And then they serve as a support network for each other. There's the fantastic Carolyn Cole. If you're interested in building a cultural district in your community, reach out to her. She can walk you through the process. And if you have ideas about what the cultural districts can do or want to build relationships with the cultural districts program, please reach out to Carolyn or me. And then here's some more information to stay engaged with us. And if you know of anyone that's working in arts and culture that does not know about Mass Cultural Council, please make an introduction and we will follow up and see what we can do to support them. Thanks so much.
Michael, that was so incredibly helpful. I probably have seen your presentation of probably about 3 or 4 times already, and I'm always picking up something new. Obviously, the cultural districts have been such a big, it has had great impact on our communities. Just again, tying it in, and we're happy to know about the Shovel Town with Easton, and again with Plymouth, and Kings and Duxbury, I know is on our way, and we have some of our delegates from our area that are on this call today. But in the there was an open question. As an old white man artist, I find that there is little or no support for my work, either institutionally or as an individual. Bias is rampant, as is ageism. What is there to do about this?
I hope you are applying to our grant programs. If you feel like you've experienced any bias, please let us know. We're working very hard to mitigate all the biases. You know, art is subjective. And so one of the things we're discussing at the agency is eradicating excellence from a guideline. You know, you see a bunch of art on the wall behind me. Some of the stuff I love, some of it I don't love. And my husband has the differing opinion. So when we have panels where we're reviewing art based on excellence as a criteria, bias can come into place there. So we're having deep conversations about getting rid of that and what do we do in place of that, because our funding is not going to support everyone. So we have to have some guidelines to figure out who gets funding. But please reach out to me about that.
Yeah, and I think, Michael, I think what we heard from Keiko as well as from yourself, and I know we're going to hear from Lee, is that the communication, if one is feeling a bias, if one is not feeling that, there's always someone to pick up a phone and to listen and to hear and I really could not strain, either that or even through your local community, your select board, Old Colony Planning Council or regional planning agency. We're all talking to each other, and from if there is anything that we've learned prior to COVID, during COVID, is that it is unleashing a number of feelings of what folks are feeling, and particularly as it relates to the arts and cultural. So thank you for answering.
Yeah, and I will say that I think grant makers are all being called to task as well. And I know I'm in rooms with lots of grant makers throughout the month, and this is a question that we're dealing with as we go along. But I will tell you that please reach out. Feel free to reach out anytime if you have any question or any concern, and we'll respond to you.
Right. There was a question out there about, are there any resources for towns to get ready for the upcoming 250th of the country?
I haven't heard yet. I do live in fear that I'm going to get like a whole bunch of money thrust upon me to give out for all these celebrations. But in every single city has their own originating date, and so we shall see. I think it's a good opportunity for you all to reach out to your legislator to see if they're planning on funding some of these celebrations happening.
But I know that Lee Filson's going to be talking about what would have been the 400th, but we won't get there yet. There's one more question that I thought that was, it was just for previously, there was a question in terms of, this was back to Keiko's comments, was there a website to see if the FY22 application, and Dottie provided the link in the question and answer. So thank you, Dottie, for answering that. And I do not see any other questions at this point. So with that, thank you, Michael, for that great presentation. And with that is yes, our homegrown, our local is Lee Filson. And Lee, if you would like to present your PowerPoint.
All right, thank you very much. And just thinking a little bit about what we've heard from both Keiko and Michael, The one thing that I think that both of them are famous for is that they really know how to work with others, and they really know how to get out there and work together. And in doing some of the research, because I'm going to talk about how tourism and the arts really do go together. But one of the things, interestingly enough, to make a mention about the person that wrote the question, that it talked about with artists, is that tourism and the arts need to talk together a whole lot more than they do. And one of the things that it pointed out was that oftentimes artists are so into their work that they get into their own thing and they forget about organizing with other people and getting together. And so I think that maybe finding a like group or finding a group with a lot of different people would bring you even more perspectives in helping to promote your art and such. And then, of course, you need tourism promotion to help get the word out there and get things done for you. So first, thank you also to the Old Colony Planning Council for inviting me to join two people I admire and look to for examples of professionalism. OCPC concerns itself with aging, community planning and economic development, transportation, and specialized services, all important to both tourism and the arts. And these are but a few of the many things that OCPC does to better our county of Plymouth. And both Mary and Dottie have been a huge help to me. I also want to do a shout out to Representative Muratori. He's a huge supporter of both tourism and the arts, and has helped us to go miles beyond where we might not have gone without him. And because of the jobs that Keiko and Michael do, Massachusetts tourism and the arts have benefited, and we who live here have enjoyed the bounty from it. So with that, let me pull up share my screen, and I'll talk a little bit about, all right. There we go. First of all, I'm going to talk about the word symbiotic. It's kind of a weird word, but it's an important word for what I'm going to talk about today. When two things are symbiotic, it simply means a relationship has been established that benefits both. And so goes tourism and the arts. And so I kept thinking about the song while I was doing this, Happy Together. So I kind of thought, I would kind of add that to the top. Luckily for you, I'm not going to sing the entire song. The grants that Keiko and Michael spend thousands of hours administrating allow this symbiotic relationship to truly blossom like a flower. Cultural funding allows the arts to thrive and dazzle tourists, and tourism promotion funding attracts the diverse audience that art requires to create and to dream. So how can something as beautiful as art, or something so ethereal as compelling people to travel, be economic drivers or actual industries? Well, many of us know the answer to that. But it is time to give the arts and tourism their due in the world of economics. The market for arts and tourism reached US $43 billion in 2022, and locations of historical and cultural interest, like Plymouth County, consistently attracted more visitors than those that did not offer history and the arts together. No less than the United Nations World Tourism Organization sees the trillions of dollars tourism contributes to the economies of the world. The top 3 countries feature art prominently among their biggest tourism assets. The first is Europe. They spend on tourism and art around $570 billion a year. Asia and the Pacific are number 2 at $435 billion a year. And of course, America follows right behind at third. We spend about $334 billion a year on arts and tourism. The pairing of arts and culture with tourism can lead to economic development by bringing visitors to the area, while also contributing to community well-being by invigorating local areas and creative practice. That from Americans for the Arts. Art brings to tourists and locals, because, by the way, locals are tourists too. We can't forget that. Art brings to both a sense of well-being for all who enjoy art assets, Art enhances mental health through beauty and relaxation. Tourism and arts communities create higher civic engagement and more social cohesion, something that we all need today. The arts drive travel satisfaction and revenue to tourism. Tourism, in turn, drives exposure and revenue to the arts. Both strengthen the economy. So why do we travel, and why do our souls require art? Well, to change by living like a local, to show through social media those rare captured moments, to work on individual health through sports or wellness experiences, to gain access through private exploration of historic, new, or unusual places, to bond with planned multi-generational adventures, or to contribute through rescuing, through teaching, or learning in new places. I'm sure you're all familiar with this statistic from Americans for the Arts. The arts, cultural heritage, and history make up over 2/3 of all tourism in the United States. 35.3 million travel for the arts and spend twice as much than other tourists, an average of $1,000 a trip compared to $600 who aren't seeking out art with tourism. Travel brings a 68% increase in empathy for other cultures. 77% say they can communicate better with different types of people after they travel. Tourism and the arts inspire connection, empathy, and renewed appreciation for the way of others. Both are passionate industries that bring economic development and peaceful, clean infrastructure to communities. State administrations and legislatures that fund tourism and the arts realize a huge return on investment. So last, I wanted to bring it back again to See Plymouth itself and let you know about one of the grants that Keiko mentioned, the TTSE grant. We were very lucky to be awarded $1 million to share with Bristol County, along with Plymouth County, to talk about South Shore secrets. And the reason we're talking about secrets is because this grant is made to help us with the shoulder seasons as well as with the winter time. We can advertise, promote, and bring forth for everyone to see things that are happening between November 1st and April the 30th. And so we're very, very excited to have it. And we're going to talk about not only all the South Shore secrets and take people into the arts, into museums, into theater, all of the various things that that continue to go on throughout the year here in Massachusetts. And so we also are going to help with our own Thanksgiving brand. We're going to talk about in Plymouth, Massachusetts. We're going to help to promote to even further places the USA Thanksgiving Celebration Parade, as well as all of the Thanksgiving happenings at Plymouth Patuxent Museums. So if you have things going on during the winter that are either special events or something that you do regularly that you'd like to draw more people into, if you would be sure and let us know here at See Plymouth, and I'll make sure you have my email. We'd be glad for those in Plymouth County or Bristol County to join in with this campaign with us. But getting to grants, you heard a lot about many grants that are available right now. And what I will tell you is that I had to kind of shift and go from just everyday tourism promotion with what I had when I realized that all of the American Rescue Plan Act money was out there, as well as the monies that the state legislature gave to start moving things again, and Mott with all of the things they added, and all of Michael's MCC grants that were added. I realized that it's now is the time to really learn grants and to get into grants. And if you're a little intimidated by those grants, I can tell you, I wasn't that great or familiar with them either. But once you get into it, you can do it. They're not as hard as they would appear. It does take a lot of paperwork, so you have to delegate or work on that yourself. But it's well worth it, because Michael made the point that it's not always going to be there. And he's absolutely right about that. if there are grants out there that are relative to what you're doing, go after them now, because this is a time when you can collect monies to help with the arts, to help with tourism promotion, to help with all of the things that you're trying to get across. So, so with that, I think I'll end there.
With just that, my goodness, there was a lot, obviously, that you had shared with the folks. I have always has on me wherever I'm traveling in Southeastern Mass. I have my See Plymouth app.
Yes.
I use often all the time when, particularly within our communities, because if I am going to have a meeting with the town, I'm going to go and then have a restaurant. And as Michael and certainly that Keiko had talked about is, I'm also going to go stop by, maybe get some flowers or do some other things while I'm there. So it's always handy to have it. And I know Dottie from our office had been working with our communities with having a particular business app that was also replicating a little bit of the same thing for each community. But you know, I think what you had, Lee, today and a whole bunch of information, we will share your contact information. When we send this out, we will send everybody's, but you know, I know you have some members of your staff here today that that are on, and that they are incredible resource to us. So I just wanted to share that with everyone. I'm looking at the
I also, Leah, need that presentation in your notes. That's some really great information.
It was really fun
curriculum.
to research all that, actually. It really was.
Yeah. I do. There's one statistic. I forget what it was last year, but for the US GDP, the arts and culture sector contributes 900 and something billion dollars to the GDP, which is bigger than education, agriculture, and construction and utilities.
Wow. Wow.
And you know, Mary, with some of your comments, another thing that occurred to me that that we really don't talk about much, but both tourism and the arts really contribute to, is the fact that all around us, especially in the smaller towns, we represent 26 towns in one city in Plymouth County. But for all of us, as newspapers are going away and all of these forms of media are going away, it's really the tourism promotion and the arts that are picking up, at least for telling people where to go and what to do. And when you've got a tourism asset within a city that's also active with art, or a town, or even a county, it just really does help people to stay in touch.
It's a really good point. You know, the capacity for some of our communities, there's some that are just struggling just to make it through. It's day-to-day activities, right? And then there are those that have the ability to have great staff to continue to go. That's where I think where you and where Michael and Keiko come in, and your staff, because you're to reach out. That's the hardest part, right? The hardest part is to ask a hard question. The hardest part is to follow up, because once you do, you're going to be embraced. And, you know, and I'm going to bring Dottie back into this because as a chair of the Board of Select, the Select Board, that is a crucial role to show that leadership, to say that, yes, tourism and cultural arts are an important part of our economy. I don't know, Dottie, if you want to weigh in and then maybe provide some closure to today.
Sure. Well, there was actually a question in the Q&A now that was talking about how do you quantify some of these results on the local level. And I think that when you're top leadership, whether it be a select board, city council, town council, mayor, to get people involved in that. We have a cultural district in Easton, and it's really been the cultural district, when it's recognized that way, is really the hub that brings together the arts, humanities, sciences. And we just had a convening Friday, actually, where we brought the members of our cultural district together to talk about a lot of these issues and how can we share and amplify the message that we're a destination, even though people might not think your town is a destination. There's lots of ways to look at that, whether that is I would love to see that you had sports on your list, Keiko. I really hadn't even thought to include that, but that also, there's agriculture and aquaculture. All of these are parts of travel, tourism, and economic development. And I think that just convening groups of people together to sit down and say, is this impacting you? How is it impacting you? How can we do better if we're going to have a performance at one of our locations? How do we let the restaurants know, advertise for that? People could come for lunch before or dinner after, or they could go get dessert at another place after, or while they're waiting in line, they could go over to the library and look at the art exhibit there and really have a lot of these collaborators work together. And the other part of that too is recognizing, and I think it was a thread through here as well, accessibility. One of the things with arts and culture is really to make it as inclusive as possible for physical mobility, but also for people of different socioeconomic means. So I know it's a priority for us that we want the arts and culture to be available for free or no or low cost to people. I was at something a few years ago and they had a violinist. It was actually about housing. And this violinist was saying that they go out into the communities of the unhoused population and they play music because it's something that can really connect people in all different levels. And it brings joy and peace to people that are experiencing a lot of stress. And they found that that was very helpful through their anecdotal relationships on helping people. So it just really touches everyone. Like you said, Lee, it touches everybody in so many different ways. And I think that local opportunities and local leadership to drive that is really important. And if people want to talk about that and share ideas, feel free to reach out to OCPC or your regional agency. We have people on this Zoom from all over the state, but your regional planners can really guide this discussion as well.
Thank you, Dottie. And I know within the Q&A, Selectman from Kingston had wanted to agree. And, the question that Shikanya had raised, I think that data really is important. I know that's a whole nother realm that Dottie's going to be working on for our website is a data dashboard, but also really it won't be probably to the extent that we would want to get too detailed, but the intent is that we are able to provide some data that could be helpful to our local communities. Again, the capacity of maybe not having, you have one planner and not two, where you really could use two, or an economic development director. So certainly reach out to your regional planning agencies, certainly reach out to the Mass Cultural as well as MOT, and also see Plymouth. That's the point of today's session, is not the end. This is just the beginning of the communication, and circling back to us would be the best. So any other? Yes, Mike?
I wanted to offer there. So I thank you so much, Dottie. I do think that so much of the work we have to do as a cultural sector is to come together and convene and really talk about the concerns that we have regarding the cultural sector. I am one to fully admit that funding is not going to fix the problems that exist in the cultural sector. That's one way to support the work that you're doing, but we're going to need legislation. We're going to need some critical thinking. We're going to need some creative thinking to really think about all the things that are plaguing the cultural sector. There's a mindset that it's okay for artists to be starving, right? We all say starving artists, and that should not be an okay thing to think about. The other thing I wanted to, but artists have to come together and show up at the public square to build relationships with your selectmen, your council members, your state reps and state senators. That's the way we're going to get work done. The one thing I also want to say, and it sort of loosely ties to the economy, is that I think beyond the actual dollars spent in arts and culture, the expanding your mind to creativity is another reason why we have to support this. There's a bunch of philosophers out there that are naming this age that we're in the creative age, realizing that all the information we need, we can get on these little computers in our pockets. And it's not about the acquisition of information, it's about what you do with that information. And so I think creativity is going to be a skill set that's going to be extremely valuable for you. If you're in the creative sector, if you're in the business sector, if you're in education, whatever sector you're in, it's all going to be about creativity. So that exposure to arts and culture is extremely valuable. And that's one of the reasons why I think we need to double down on what we have here in Massachusetts, because Massachusetts is always known to be a leader. And so I think if we can lead in ramping up the creative and cultural sector, we're going to also lead on having the most creative minds in the world right here in our state.
Could not have, I think that ending with that in terms of the leadership, in terms of the arts and cultural here in Massachusetts is certainly the point that we are all looking for. Barbara from Truro is saying it's a bit overwhelming, and I know, Barbara, it's okay to feel overwhelmed. The part that we need to leave with is that these talented and resourceful folks that we have, whether it's your select board or whether, we have a relationship with Mass Municipal Association, not only the regional planning agencies. So the folks that are here today will provide the PowerPoint presentations, will provide the links to the websites. But I also wanted to say thank you to Keiko, Michael, and Lee for joining us today. You certainly have been inspiring and continue to inspire us, and hope the audience and those that joined are equally inspired. I do want to give a shout out. I know Al DiGirolamo from Senator Brady's office, and Senator Brady's been very supportive. Really all of our legislators, but I know Matt Muratori, Representative Muratori, is on the meeting today, and again for his support. We can't do it without the legislators. We can't do it without our town folks. Historic preservation as well. I mean, those are all the things that are all important and intertwined. And we hope to see all of you and your applications and be funded. So have a great afternoon. Watch out for that snow and ice out there. And again, thank you to the panelists and to Dottie for organizing this. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you.